Worker bees and honey queens. Insert your punch card into the infernal machine. Pray that your husband didn't pack you meatloaf for lunch again. And yes, we are counting all the minutes you spend in the toilet and deducting them from your vacation time.
Because it's time to talk Tull to me. I was trying to think of there's
A joke, Nick? Have a joke?
boss pays me a dime so I poop on their time, or
Yeah.
boss makes a dime, I make a nickel, boss makes a dime, so I poop
That's
on
why
company
listeners talk
time.
Tull to me on. Welcome back to our podcast. I am Omen Sade.
And I am Nick McGill.
Together, we are Feckless Moans,
And this is Talk Tull to Me.
a collective bargaining meeting in the union headquarters of Prog Rock, in which no rating pact Nick and OSHA violation Omen negotiate a contract that provides equal opportunity to every single song that long-laboring rock band Jethro Tull has ever produced. We will review the grandfather guitar clause in the contract of Martin Backloading Barr, codify in writing the traditions of David Past Practices Peg, and consider the safety value provided by Mark Closed Shop Craney, all while hoping that through our collective power, we can force the cold flute hand of Ian Alter Ego Anderson to finally give us a day off. We are so tired.
You never cease to amaze me on those long rambling intros.
I'm amazed that I never cease.
Never stop. Can't stop, won't stop. Not until we get through Zealot Gene. At least.
Don't stop believing.
Don't stop believing.
Nick, hello, welcome back to the podcast. That is our podcast.
This is our podcast. It is Talk Tull to Me. I am back, as are you, as are presumably and hopefully our listeners. Before we get into the meat and potatoes today, we have a couple of things that we want to cover beforehand. Let's start with Omen. I believe you have some news. You got a little something that you would like to plug.
You know, contrary to what you may believe, neither Nick or I actually cease to exist when you stop listening to the podcast.
It's true.
We do other things, and there is another podcast that I have had the good fortune to be included on. It is a trivia podcast. It's about 45 minutes long. It is called the Last Call Trivia Podcast. So if you like trivia, or if you simply can't get enough of my sweet mellifluousness, have a listen. It's on all the pod places.
All the pod places that you could possibly find.
Potable.
It's potable. It's a potent potable. Did you ever watch Jeopardy?
No. Heavens no.
No? Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah, I like Jeopardy.
Yeah, I did. One, because I didn't have a TV, and two, because that's too close to Sudoku for me, and I don't approve.
Yeah, I knew there was a little bit of a Venn diagram there. Yeah.
Nick,
Omen?
today we have the exquisite pleasure of talking Tull about another song. But before that, do we have any correspondences?
That we do. Marley, if you don't mind.
Marley!
Oh, Marley, why are you walking like that? What's going on?
Frostbite on me nipples.
Frostbite on your nipples. I mean, that we won't even get into that just yet, but why is it causing you to hobble?
Nerve connects to the feet.
Oh, the nipple nerve runs to the feet.
The nipple bone connects to the knee bone, as you don't, yes.
That's I think I have heard that in my studies. Yeah.
Too much shoveling in the storm.
Oh, is that it? Is that I thought it melted. I appreciate your going out there and taking one for the team, Marley. I will make you some bone broth.
The bone broth bone's connected to the nipple bone.
That's also true. Why don't you head upstairs and check out the anatomy book? You might need a. All right, take your time. It's all right.
Ooh,
boy, he was a hobbly old man before the nipple incident.
He just doesn't stop.
He doesn't. I think if he did, he'd never start back up again. I think that's what it is.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
he probably died years ago, actually.
I mean, for what it's worth, I don't have to feed him. So, I mean, it's It is a win-win, I think.
Or bathe him.
Or bathe him. He doesn't smell, so.
So what did he bring you there, Nick?
He gave me an email printed on birch bark for some reason. This is from a new writer-inner.
Our favorite kind of writer-inner.
White Innocence.
We do love our regular writer-inners as well.
Our second favorite kind of writer-inner.
This is from Bob H. The subject is To Me Tull Talk, and the message is Momeless Fex.
Oh my gosh.
I discovered your podcast recently after seeing somewhere that you had a chance to interview Ian. Or maybe it was something else, but I'm fairly sure it was on Facebook, and have been binging at work. I've made it up to episode 103, March the Mad Sigh. Love the show and appreciate the work you do. My first Tull album was Broadsword, which I bought just because I like the cover art. We did things like that back in the dark ages of record stores and no internet. And it didn't take long to become obsessed. Had a friend who was also a fan, and I'm afraid he enabled my addiction. The greatest compilation ever released, in my not-so-humble opinion, was the 20 Years of Jethro Tull boxed set, which I had on vinyl, CD, and cassette. I went from my first album to buying 3 copies of the same release in less than 2 years. My first Tull concert was the Rock Island tour. I believe that was the last of the classic Ian shows. We went to every Tull concert in the state for a decade after that, and they slowly became less overblown and theatrical. We were there for the music, so that was okay. But it's disappointing for everyone younger who never had the chance to see the act. Like everyone else, I have a broadsword tattoo. Even talked my wife into letting me name our son Ian. Luckily, he is also a fan.
Wow.
Thank you, Bob.
Bob H., thank you so much for writing in. Thank you for listening to the podcast, and thank you for that wonderful jumpstart and Tales from the Tull.
Tales from the Tull. That might have to be a new part of that segment. I like that. Tales from Tull Tales. Tull Tales.
Oh, Tull Tales. That was so obvious. I missed it.
That's actually there was a tribute album, a Tull tribute album that had like Martin Barr on there, had a couple of other people who had worked with Tull at the time.
Okay.
Came out when we were in high school, I believe. It was called A Tull Tale.
No, there we go. Yeah.
So it's not original, but it's good.
Thank you for reminding us of the overlap, the importance of album art in the days of physical albums.
Sure.
I think even by the time we were buying music physically in the Barnes & Noble music section, it was reduced to a small enough size that it didn't have as much of an impact.
No way.
As it did when you have a 16-inch by 16-inch multi-layered
Piece of art, yeah.
platform for visual expression. I mean, it's like a bottle of wine. Most people buy bottles of wine based on the label.
Yeah. Not how it sounds.
Once we begin downloading wine,
Then it'll just nobody will care.
The great artwork of the wine bottles will be lost.
That is why the record company really fought against the cover for This Was the picture of everybody in old man makeup, the name Jethro Tull nowhere to be seen. They were like, why? This is the worst decision ever. Like, why would you do
I think
this?
it's actually genius because when you're flipping through the records in the record store, in that stack, you get to something like that and you have to pause and be like, what in the heck is this?
Yeah.
Is it backwards? Who
What
are
is
these
this
old
madness?
men?
Yeah. So you flip it and you investigate. Yeah.
And then you invest.
And then you invest in Jethro Tull.
Thank you, Bob H. I hope
Thank
you continue to enjoy the podcast, and we will continue to enjoy knowing that you are listening to the podcast.
So shall we get into a little more lore before we jump into the song itself?
Lord blimey, let's indeed. What have you got?
So let's talk about solo album versus not solo album.
Okay,
versus
sure.
Tull
Yeah.
album. So Chrysalis and Terry Ellis, one half of Chrysalis, were insistent, one half of the starters of Chrysalis. They had plenty of people at that time. They were insistent that it be a Tull album. Tull sold albums. And Martin and Dave were on there. So it should be Tull, basically. Because remember, Dave did a little bit of bass finagling prior to this.
Yeah, of course, on the tour.
With Stormwatch and the tour. And the way it seems is he was lined up to be the bassist for Tull after this, after this solo album. So because of that, Chrysalis and Terry were like, this is a Tull album. How can you not call it a Tull album? If it's an Ian Anderson solo album, it should be Ian, flute, and acoustic.
Right.
Which I would love to hear, which is actually half of a lot of the albums that we listen to. So You can't really say that's not Tull either. But I get it. I get the loose logic there. At that point, the talks with Chrysalis never reached a point where they said, listen, if this does not go out as Tull, it's not getting released. They never threatened.
Yeah.
But
that would be counterproductive.
But Ian does think that it was a mistake to come out as a Tull album. And Dave Pegg never knew that it was supposed to be a solo project in the first place.
Oh, that's a bassist, isn't it?
Yep.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that there was such a fuss and a hullabaloo about it, because I'm sure that at the time it seemed very important.
Uh-huh.
But for our ears, what would it matter?
Right.
How much differently would we listen to it now if it was released under the name Ian Anderson versus Tull?
We do have the luxury of the remove. Who knows what it was like in the moment when people were so actively invested in the band and the band had just broken off and it was the first of the solo albums. So everyone's like, well, the band members are gone. And now Ian wants to put out a solo album. Is Jethro Tull done?
I think that was, I'm putting myself into the imaginary shoes of the record label.
Yeah.
And that would be my fear.
Yeah, I think that is a good thing to be concerned about. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right on that.
Fear good.
Fear good. Fear good. Fear keep you alive. At the time, there was a leak to Melody Maker, the music magazine, thought to be from Terry Ellis, which he has done this in the past, so it's not outside the realm of possibility, because he's the one who leaked that Tull was retiring after a Passion Play got bombed.
Right, I remember that.
So this time the rumor was that there was a huge upheaval in the band's lineup, and the headline from Melody Maker was Jethro Tull - Big Split. Ian says it's forgivable except for the fact that the editor, Ray Coleman, also included the line, Anderson had been frustrated with the old lineup for some time and finally took the dramatic plunge to fire 3 musicians.
Which we know is not what happened.
Exactly, yeah. So Ian wasn't surprised by it. It's sensationalism. They had to sell an issue. He actually felt bad for Barry D and John Evans because they didn't think that they were fired until they read that.
Right. And then, of course, they would think, well, now, wait a minute. Yeah. And that's their reputation and their careers on the potentially affected by that.
So regardless of what they knew to be the case, they were really kind of peeved about that.
Of course.
And Ian wrote them all letters to forewarn them, but none of them came out of that exchange terribly
But
happy.
all the letters were delayed by the plague on their way to Mantua, and so couldn't reach them in time.
That's it. Bang on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little Romeo and Juliet reference for you.
So that's it for info. We can talk about the song itself.
That's a fabulous idea, Nick. Why don't we talk about the song itself? The song, may I say its title?
I was just about to ask. I would love nothing more.
The song of the hour, the song to which we will be listening and subsequently talking Tull about today is Working John, Working Joe.
It was recorded at Pop Please with the Maison Rouge mobile studio on May 24th. Take 5 was the master.
Oh.
So this song, I think we referenced this a couple of songs ago. I think it was during bonus tracks. I think it was Man of God.
Yeah.
I think it was Man of God. So this is an instance of one of those songs that had been kicking around for actually 4 years. This song was included on the Songs from the Wood 40th anniversary album in 2017, because that's when this song came about. but
Yeah.
it got completely re-recorded for A with revised lyrics. And that makes utter sense because whatever sound they came up with for Songs from the Wood would obviously need to be revamped for something as drastic, quote unquote, drastic as A.
Indeed. So, Nick, without further ado, should we jump into the song itself?
Sure. Let us dive into this number. Let's take a listen to just under 5 minutes, Working John, Working Joe.
When I was a young man, as all good tales begin, I was taught to hold out my hands.
Nick, there we have Working John, Working Joe.
There it is. There it is.
How long was this song again?
It's like just over 4:40, so just under 5.
Okay. Does this song do it for you?
It does something. I wouldn't say it's like a favorite, like I'm going to throw it on top of the list, but it's a good song. I like it.
Yeah. It's definitely it's a song that I really enjoy. It's not as favorite to me as whatever we talked about last week.
But clearly a favorite. Filingdale Flyer.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. But I do enjoy this song.
It's good like the album is good.
It's solid.
Yeah, it's a solid song. It's
It's
really
a solid
good.
song.
Yeah. It does its job and it does it well, like Working
It doesn't
John and
complain.
Working
This
Joe.
song hasn't taken a day off in 30 years.
It'll mention that every week, but it won't complain.
I'm so excited to talk about work.
Yeah, yes, thrilled. Just so thrilled.
So this song, let's talk musically.
Sure. We got a nice acoustic start. It's the first bit of acoustic that we've heard this album. Granted, this is only track number 3, but still, at this point, well, going up until this point, up until Stormwatch, we're very accustomed to acoustic tracks.
Definitely.
The start of A with Crossfire and Filingdale Flyer is such a big jolt
Right.
that maybe it's nice after those two to be like, hey, we still got a little something in here.
We didn't sell the acoustic guitar.
Yeah, it does go into electric again, and it does go very synthy. We don't go back into acoustic at all, but it's there. You know,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
gives it to us.
Yeah, the synth follows hard on the heels of the acoustic guitar, but it as you say, it's lovely to have that reminder of that instrumentation. One of my favorite parts of this song is the synth going. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't. But the thing for me, it's I think I do. For me, whenever I think of the synth in here, it's like wow, 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 wow.
Yeah, I like that as well. But in the back, lower down, you hear this. I love it.
It's on the tuba setting, I think.
It might be. It's PHAT.
It is. It is a fat beat. Yeah.
It's a fat synth.
Now I'm a working Joe. I'm a working Joe. And I'm doing what I know.
I don't have that much more musically. It follows a pretty, like once it gets going, it there's not a ton of variation. It's not a super proggy, quote unquote,
Yeah.
sound. It's mostly, I think, in 8/8. Although I am convinced that there are some measures of 7/8 that get dropped in there.
Just kind of sporadically. Is there any, like, is there a consistency to it? You know, that like in certain parts in between, or
I couldn't figure that out. I was looking
Yeah.
for a pattern, and maybe I'm entirely wrong. Maybe there's no 7/8, but I'm pretty sure that in the first half of the song there's at least one measure where they cut a beat off of it. Maybe it's a transition.
you actually fell asleep for a single beat?
I had temporal fugue that was very short.
Just very, very quick.
Yeah. Just a quick break from reality. We all need one.
We do.
That's why we're all listening to this podcast. But it is a fairly even rhythm. There's a lot of
Yes.
nice textural variation with the synths. The bass is David Pegg is. I'm really starting to enjoy his bass playing the more that I listen to it.
It's good. He's a very solid bass player, yeah.
And he's got a little bit of a sense of humor to the bass, I think.
Would you say that John Glascock did not? That he was like a very serious bassist? Ian is a very serious bassist. I will say that.
If you had to characterize the bassists, I would say Ian is a very studious bassist.
Okay.
He's very functional.
Yes.
In a wonderful way.
Yep.
I would say that John Glascock brings this sense of the mystery of the bass.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, he's wearing like a half mask and a cape. maybe a fedora with a very wide brim. Yeah.
The bass extends into dimensions that we cannot perceive.
Yes. I like that. I think that's accurate.
Whereas David Pegg, I feel it's a little cheeky. It's a little like, oh,
okay. Yeah.
Look at this bass walking down the street. Where's he going, eh?
Oh, watch the bass. But Jeffrey Hammond, I would classify as barely a bassist.
he's a bassist in the sense that he owned a bass.
He has played a bass at one point.
but there was something pure about his bass playing.
There's an innocence to his bass.
An innocence. What am I doing here?
Oh, I guess I'll just play this bass. Someone put it in my hand.
I better do something while I'm standing here.
Oh, all these people are watching me.
So, what else do we have in this song?
I mean, I think I'm pretty much on the same level as you in terms of it's just very steady and it's very consistent. And maybe that is to pair with the stalwart march forward of the worker.
Yeah.
You know?
I also really like the drums in this song. Mark Craney is really doing some fun stuff. Just coming in really heavy, and for me, it's heralding in the sound of the 80s with that.
Yeah.
What's that very first time that we hear the drums?
Oh yeah, the big tom fill, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a super 80s sound. You're right, yeah.
And it's great. I love it.
The tom drum was actually not invented until the 80s.
Is that true?
Jethro Tull was Ian Anderson was like, I did the Lyricon. I think we should do tom drums.
I think you may be pulling my leg.
I'm pulling something.
You pull a little harder.
You'll be disappointed.
I won't have to go see the chiropractor.
Oh, thank God that's where that went. What is this song about?
Nick McGill.
I've got the explanation from Ian.
Let's save that.
Okay.
Let's faff about for a bit. See how close. You've obviously have it in a sealed envelope and you haven't read it.
That's right. It's
okay.
Yep. It's in a vibranium envelope. Yeah.
For me, this song has always spoken to me about the evolution of working life in the 20th century, and moving from the industrial age to more of the information age.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see that.
Not explicitly when it comes to, the function of digitalness in the workplace, but more the trap of what is presented to us by capitalism, where we think, if I work hard, the story we're all told as kids, or we were told as we were kids, and I know this is based in England, but the kind of what we call the American dream here, or the lie of the American dream, is like, well, if you work hard, you can do better than your parents did.
Yeah.
That's the great.
Great. Okay.
Well, and for many years that was true.
Oh, yes, it was. Yeah.
But I think that this is showing the loss of dignity of work, and what happens when you buy into that, and what are the consequences of that? Is there a loss of kind of the richness of working life?
Yeah. I really like the idea of the evolution that you're talking about there, that we do see him talking about, like, kind of like a blue collar, but then we also see him talking later on in the song about like a white collar person, and the evolution of, like, well, at some point everybody was blue collar, but now we're starting to see more and more jobs that are white collar, and more people
Yeah.
are filling in those jobs. So regardless of whether you're digging a trench to lay conduit for electrical wire, which I spent 3 years doing,
Sure.
or you're sitting at a desk in a cubicle somewhere doing data entry, like
Right.
you're still a cog in the machine.
Right, and there's this perceived improvement, that with higher wages come
right,
all
yeah.
the trappings of success, quote unquote. But I think that by the end of the song, we get this we experience the hollowness of that success.
Yeah. And I just want to put a note in that. I got paid the best I've ever been paid to dig holes in the ground than I do to get data entry or IT work or whatever. So it's not a wage thing. It's more of a perceived status thing.
Yes.
Oh, I don't have to dig in the ground. I can work on a computer all day.
Yeah. Also, your back probably hurts less.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it hurts differently.
It does, yeah. I have a stand-up desk, so I'm actually pretty good, but
If I have to hear about his stand-up desk one more
dude, I don't mention it that often. Have I told you? I gotta.
Oh my god. Let's dive into the lyrics.
Sure. Do you want to do the Ian thing now? Before that way, and then we can pull out
yeah.
pieces? Yeah, okay. So according to Ian, this song is about the fact that while we tend to think of the working man as blue collar, people in all strata are in the rat race. So
Sure,
I think we hit it spot on. And the stakes get raised the more successful you are.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose. And ultimately the take home is that you shouldn't scoff at the rich, which I'm not terribly fond of as an idea, but
I love scoffing at the rich.
I will scoff as much as I can at the rich. But this song pulls back. The last 2 episodes we talked about like really specific events and relatively current events too for at the time of writing.
Yes.
This one pulls us back a little bit to kind of fit into the theme of what Stormwatch did, which was more overarching, more of a general commentary on society and where it's progressing.
Right.
So what jumps out at you lyrically in this song?
There are a couple of things.
I have to vent this. I'm so sorry. I have to vent this.
What is it?
The thing I hate the most about this song is that it sounds like he's saying Joe both times.
Oh, I know. I've always thought that.
Crazy. Drives me bananas.
I used to listen to it and think it was working
Joe.
Working Joe, or sometimes I would think working Joe, working John, because I knew that the word John was in it, but I didn't hear it the first time, and then my mind would be like, well, it must be the second time.
It must be. Oh, it's not. What's going on?
Yes, no, I agree.
Okay, so now lyrically, what are we thinking here?
I love the first line. When I was a young man, as all good tales begin.
When I was a young man, as all good tales begin.
That immediately puts it into the realm of the mythic or the storytelling.
Yeah, and our narrator is older. We're hearing his past. It's not in the present telling. It is our narrator has a grandson on his knee or is telling his kid who just graduated high school, like, listen, this is the way it is. This is how it was for me.
He's filing his papers for a second divorce.
Yeah, and he's telling the clerk because he just needs to talk to someone. He's very lonely.
Yeah. Now, what confuses me, so the first verse is quite clear to me in general, but I was taught to hold out my hand confuses me a little bit.
I was taught to hold out my hands.
I wonder if that's a little bit of like a transatlantic miscommunication, because in America, if you say, oh, someone's holding out their hand in the context of work, the implication is that they're waiting for a handout. They want unemployment, or they want food stamps, or they want some kind of state help.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this case, I get the sense that means, I was taught to show up, with context clues, it makes me think like I was taught to show up on time and show off my calluses, something like that. So I'm wondering what the specific hand reference could be.
It might even be like a work line reference of like people like lining up and at like a construction site and the foreman's like, okay, I need someone who can do this, and you hold out your hand and you say, oh, I can lay stone.
Oh, I volunteer. Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
I was also thinking, I know that in the old days, it was in a lot of like religious schools, you would have to hold out your hand to show that they were clean.
Oh, interesting.
The teacher would line up all the students and say, all right,
Yeah.
everyone hold out your hands. And you would get punished if you had dirty hands.
But how does that work here? Especially because in this first part, he's clearly working like a labor job. So why would you want like clean hands?
Maybe it's just the idea of submitting for inspection.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, the term is broader. Yeah.
But besides that line, I mean, it all kind of falls into place. I took what pittance I could win.
Can't tell what pittance I could win.
You don't have a lot of control over your wages. It's just enough to live off of. I love the pairing of I'm doing what I know for God and the economy. Oh, God.
And I'm doing what I know. The economy.
Eek. Because both of those are mysterious powers you don't understand and control your life.
And they're mythical entities that you bow down to and you don't want to get on the bad side of.
And at this time, there was a lot of economic upheaval. Thatcher won in 79 on the fears of the coming inflation, the impending recession that was around the corner. And I think that for a lot of working people, it may have been kind of the first time in a while, at least, that some of these terms were being talked about. Maybe the first time that a lot of this stuff had been talked about on the television, which was a new format, that was in everyone's homes.
You're saying the terms like inflation and
inflation,
like,
labor markets, all these things.
Stuff that was maybe dinner table conversation, but maybe not even that before then.
It could be. I can imagine a sense of mystery behind the economy and if you see, the economy is capitalized.
Sure, yeah.
Big brother watches over me.
Big brother watches over me.
For me, of course, that refers to George Orwell's 1949 release, 1984.
1984, yeah. And the state protects and feeds me, and my conscience never leaves me. And I'm loyal to the unions who protect me at all levels. Yeah, that's our chorus.
The state protects and feeds me, and my conscience never leaves me. And I'm loyal to the unions who protect me and all rebels.
Well, and if, as soon as we start talking about the unions in this context, I think that the ghost of Thatcher pops up out of the grave to say, unions? Who's got a union?
I was just going to say, was she a union buster? Is that right?
Oh, big
Yeah, okay.
time.
Yeah.
A lot of her policies, what she thought, what her policies were geared around reducing the power of laborers so that the economy could flourish. That's the whole kind of conservative strategy.
Let's not pay you so much so the economy can flourish.
Right,
quote-unquote.
Exactly. She also did a lot of privatization of state-run companies.
Sure.
Which is a big kind of, that's a standard move.
Yeah, just come over to the States, Margaret. Like it's already built here.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's something that people do whenever the economy is in trouble. People say, "Oh, well, these state-run organizations are inefficient, and the private corporations can do it so much more efficiently." Oh no! They're charging tons of money for that service. Oh no! Who could have predicted this?
Whoops! I'm sorry. This is a capitalist society. Yeah.
Anyway,
and those politicians are being paid by those private organizations to do that.
what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? I'm just a cog in the machine.
But I think that what is coming across to me in this verse is the pride. And when I was a man of labor, Nick, and before I went corporate, and when I worked with a lot of people who carpenters and welders, people who work with their hands, there is this immense pride of like, you know what?
Oh my God, yeah.
My job sucks. I don't get paid enough. My life is horrible. I haven't bought new shoes in a decade. The society looks down on me like I'm some kind of a dirty rat. But I welded that seam. Look at that. I did that.
I every time I drive through Syracuse, anytime I see a spot where I put up a pedestrian light or a button or dug in the ground and you can't even see it because they put sidewalk over it, I look at that and I'm like, I was there.
I dug that hole.
I dug that hole. There's not a hole there anymore. There was, and it was because of me.
Yeah. No, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, it genuinely is.
And there's a sense of cleanliness, wholesomeness almost.
Yeah, right. You're using you're using the body that God gave you to create something physical and that's useful for people, as opposed to sitting at a computer or whatever.
So as we move on to the second verse,
yeah, we see the evolution, we see the growth.
Right. And there's several things, I love this song so much because it functions as the story of an individual, but it also functions as the story of an economy and a country.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And as I grew, the winds of fortune blew, and the bank smiled down upon me.
Now as I grew, the winds of fortune blew, and the bank smiled down upon me.
So interest rates, like you invested well, right?
Well, specifically, what he mentions here is mortgage.
Oh, is that just the fact that he was able to get a mortgage?
Right. And,
Gotcha,
there is
okay.
this, in the 20th century, I think that people discovered, forgetting that Jesus threw the money lenders out of the temple.
Yeah.
Banks discovered, oh my gosh, we can lend people money for things and make a huge profit on it because we're giving them very high rates of we're lending at a high rate. We're lending, they are paying back way more than what we lended them. But they have the desire for a house or a car or an education, and we can capitalize on that.
And I think the bank smiled down upon me because, you do have to have a certain amount of money or a certain value of credit before you can even get a mortgage, before you can borrow money that you then have to pay back.
Before you can enter into the privilege of going into massive soul-crushing debt.
Exactly.
You have to have achieved a certain level of success.
It's basically to prove that you can pay it back.
Right.
So I think that's what the bank. I think it's a little tongue in cheek, or maybe maybe he's so brainwashed. Maybe this character is so brainwashed that he's like, I was blessed by the bank. I mortgaged to the hill, and maybe that's a point of pride.
Well, and that's the thing. That's what I love about the writing of Ian Anderson is this is a great example of the same verse, even the same phrase, has all of those meanings simultaneously.
Yeah.
The bank was smiling down upon him because he did such a good job getting himself to this point of success. Also, the bank was smiling because they knew a sucker when they saw one.
I was just going to say, they found a shell. They found a mark. Yeah.
And that's what the bank does. They, this is the new trend in this time of the economy.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the final line of that verse is really nice. The breeze of caution behind me, just to play on throwing caution to the wind. It's poetic, and that whole verse is actually really nice in terms of its poeticisms and cross references and things.
Well, and he compares the winds of fortune with the breeze of caution.
Exactly. Yeah.
And mortgage to the hills, not through the breeze of caution behind me.
And that's where we, as many of us will recall, the Great Recession in America that hit around the time when we graduated from college.
Yeah.
It was literally caused by the fact that the banks had lent so much money to people at really, really high rates without doing their due diligence to see if people could pay it back.
Yeah, the housing bust and the
lending crisis.
The lending crisis, and the government lent the banks money, and
it was such a mess.
Then told them they didn't have to pay most of it back or whatever. And,
fortunately, now everything's fine.
Oh, we're great. We're great.
Everything's great.
I ate a can of peas for supper.
Ooh, actually sounds kind of good.
I could go for that. And then we've got a tweak on we've got the chorus, but it's tweaked a little bit.
Now I'm equal to the best of you and better than the rest of you who would criticize my success in times of national unrest.
Now I'm equal to the
And that relates, I think, very directly to the policies of Thatcher and the conversations that were happening around those policies where, I think the argument was we've let the unions, we've let the working people have too much control over the economy. And so we can't buy labor at a rate that allows us to progress as an economy.
Yeah.
And so we criticize the worker.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And this second verse was this transitional period to go from blue collar to white collar. And we reach that point at the end of this second chorus. Now I'm equal to the best of you. I am at the top just like you are. I'm better than the rest of you, everyone else who is not up here with me.
Well, and that really goes into the psychology of working people and advancement and capitalism, which is, people will tolerate very, very bad conditions as long as they think that someone else is worse off.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's really messed up, but
it is.
It's true.
Yeah, it's psychology, and it's what the idea of capitalism was built on. I mean, it makes me think of The Jungle, Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, of those people in the meat packing plants and how gosh darn terrible it was,
Sure.
Yeah.
It also, there's so much to say. So now we get to the end, and we've sort of entered we have this really sort of follows the hero's journey in a way.
Yeah.
Where you have in the beginning, you have the young hero with everything to prove. In the middle, you have this terrible struggle and crisis. And at the end, you have, in theory, the kingdom saved, the hero becoming the prince or the king.
Yeah, it's all cushy and good news from there.
Now I own my horseless carriage in its central heated garage, a rhyme that only works in British English.
I love it.
Now I own my horseless carriage in its central heated garage.
Now we start to get into maybe less than good stuff. I commute 80 miles a day, up at 7 to make it pay. I direct 10 limited companies. Like, that's a position of power. That's amazing.
Sure.
With seeming consummate expertise, 2 ulcers and a heart disease, a trembling feeling in both knees.
And I commute 80 miles a day, up at 7 to make it pay. I direct 10 limited companies with seeming consumer expertise. 2 ulcers and a heart disease, a trembling feeling in both knees.
Yeah, so a lot going on there. First of all, a heated garage.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. Also, I think that, at this time, there were plenty of people who, whose families had never owned a car because it's England and you can get away with not.
Yeah.
Because you can walk to work.
Right.
And so just even, having a car, oh my God. Bought a car? Holy cow, that's huge.
Not only does he own it, he's not even leasing it or anything. He owns it.
Right.
Not only does he own it, he has a house for it that is heated. It's not parked on the side of the road. It's not parked in the driveway. He has a garage.
And the garage itself is heated. I mean, that still is very impressive.
It's exorbitant. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's, really nice.
But yeah, no, absolutely. It is a mark of status.
I didn't even realize that people had heated garages. Like, I didn't realize that was a real thing until recently.
I'm trying to think if I've ever been in a heated garage.
Someday, Nick, if you work hard.
I cannot wait. That's my goal. That's my goal.
I've been in your garage when your wife set something on fire for art.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that up here? Or was that in Connecticut?
No, that was in your current abode. Do you not remember, Raven, setting a piece of glass aflame in your garage?
Oh, yes. Yes, I do. I do remember that now.
So for a moment, you were in a heated garage.
She was burning. I just bring the car into the garage, close all the doors, and let the car run.
Oh, so it warms it up. That's what a great idea. So obviously, the first couple of lines set up this wow, success.
Uh-huh.
But then immediately it starts to undermine it with, I commute 80 miles a day, 40 miles one way.
Yeah.
Ooh, girl.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot of commute. Up at 7 to make it pay.
Which up at 7 doesn't seem that early. But I mean, my construction job, I was up at 4.
Sure.
And I commuted an hour sometimes, depending on where the job was. So I can see it both ways. It's like, oh, that's nothing, but I mean, still, I get up at 6 every day. So,
But I think the point is like having to, no matter what is normal or not, having to build in the time to commute to an office
yeah.
takes away from your enjoyment of the profits of that job.
So substantial a commute. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I direct 10 limited companies, so obviously there's some kind of, finance implied here. With seeming consummate expertise, there's this sense of like, oh, here's the facade.
Yeah.
And it keeps building in layers with this verse. Here's the facade of success. And inside, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, someone trusts me enough for me to have gotten to this position.
Yeah.
And I can pull it off, but you pull out one Jenga piece and it's game over.
Right. 2 ulcers and a heart disease, it's destroying his health. This reminds me of somebody I worked for who, is the picture of American success. Started out, his family owned a restaurant when he was a kid, and when he was 16, he saved enough money to buy a hot dog cart. And from that hot dog cart, he built it into this advertising empire. He owned a building in New York City.
Wow. And that man was our 45th president.
Yeah. No, he never worked.
No, not a day in his fucking life.
But this guy, I sort of knew his story, and at a certain point, he and his family moved to Connecticut and sold off that building, and he eventually, he eventually left that job, and for a while he was still managing it from afar, but he really took a massive step back when he and his wife had started having kids. And I was kind of asking him one time, I was like, wow, that was a massive transition moving from Manhattan to this smaller town in Connecticut. Yeah. And he said, yeah, it was a really big transition. And he kind of paused and he said, but if we hadn't done that, I'd probably be on my second family by now.
Oof.
And I was just like, wow.
The awareness.
He clearly saw himself going down this road that he knew that the stress was going to cause massive problems for him.
Rifts and bad decisions.
Yeah. And he would either be dead or have ruined his marriage.
Yeah.
So
wow.
So he chose something else.
Wow. I've got something to swing us back into a lighter mood.
Swing on over, Daddy.
So leading up to this recording, you sent me a text a couple of days ago saying, have you heard on Spotify the Working John, Working Joe, Steve Wilson remix take number 4?
Oh, right. And you said this is take number 5.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The one that we heard, the one that is published is take number 5. Okay. Yes.
So take number 4 is on Spotify. You should all listen to it. But there's this moment, I think it's the last verse, actually.
Yeah.
It's the last verse where Ian just biffs it on the lyrics.
Seemingly forgets all the lyrics.
And he just does this amazing scat until he picks the lyrics back up in his mind and finishes with the last 2 lines. But it's amazing. It is such a peek behind the flute. It's really cool.
Well, and the incredible thing for me is twofold. One, just the experience of listening to it. I was telling you that I literally thought that I was having a stroke when I was listening to this.
This isn't right. This can't be right.
I was like, my brain isn't processing these lyrics correctly. But also the fact that everyone just keeps going with such professionalism.
Yeah. Is it just him singing? Has everybody else already done it? Or do they record everybody at once?
I think that in this context, most people were being recorded at the same time. That's my sense of it.
Okay.
I don't really know. But Nick, shall we take a little peek behind the flute, if you will?
Yes, absolutely. Buckle up.
The
there's something so satisfying about hearing him sing like that, and I can't explain it. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something so, like, it completes me to
It's the
hear
sheer
that.
determination of, like, you know what? I don't know what these words are. I wrote them. Yes, I did. But I will keep singing this nonsense.
It's like, and he commits to it. It's not like he half-asses it.
He sings nonsense with feeling.
It's not like in, oh gosh, what was it? It's not like in
Quatrain.
Quatrain where he screws up with the mandolin and it's like, oh, fuck, damn it. And
right.
Everybody continues on. But
there's this deep acceptance, this passionate acceptance of it's absurd. It's wonderful. Also, it's worth noting that in this take, we don't have the other voices backing.
Oh, that's true. Sure.
So, which makes me think David Pegg was recorded on the, on the harmonies later on.
Oh, a separate track. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
But I think all the other instruments were playing live in that one moment.
So it seems it's not terribly synthy, is it? If I remember correctly.
Right. So maybe the synth was recorded later. It's interesting to see.
And maybe that's why I like it so much, is because the synth is off and it's just like kind of it's more classic Tull. Not that I don't like the synth, but anytime I get something that is a era but sounds more like a little older Tull, like it's a special treat for me.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Speaking of special treats, Nick.
Yes.
What will we be talking Tull about next week?
Next week, we are talking track number 4 off of the album. It is the final track off of side A.
Mm.
It is the song Black Sunday. Oh, we got a teapot. We got a teapot.
Yep.
You do that after every song, with the anticipation of every song, I think.
Yeah. I've got very high blood pressure.
I need my medicine immediately.
I need my blood let out. Bring me the leech.
Across the room. Until next week, please be the winds of our fortune and blow in the direction of our merch, and buy yourself a Talk Tull to Me t-shirt or baseball cap or phone case or pillow or sweatshirt. The TeePublic has so many options. If you really don't want a t-shirt, go for something else. It's the variety is there. You can even just get a vinyl sticker.
If Talk Tull to Me makes your 80-mile daily commute a little easier, consider sharing the wealth that you create by giving us a 5-star rating and positive review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Do you feel that? That is the breeze of caution behind you.
Oh, thank God. I thought I forgot to wear pants.
I'm very gassy today. As you make your way over to Patreon, patreon.com/talktulltome. $5 a month gets you 2 additional podcasts and access to our Discord community, which is a loving and supportive and much more intelligent community than we bring to you in the podcast.
Yeah, or that we deserve. And it's full of working Johns, Joes, Janes, Jakes, Jills, Jamals,
Juans,
and
JKs, working JKs.
And JKs.
Until next week, I am the proud owner of a horseless carriage, Nick McGill.
I am the trembling feeling in your knees, Omen Sade.
We are the 2 ulcers, the feckless momes.
And baday badim badam boom bum. Talk Tull to Me.
All right, Mr. John Joseph, I see.
Yeah, John Joe. Boys at the office call me Jimmy Jan.
I see that your tests have come back. Thank you for coming in so we can discuss this.
That's great, Doc. That's great, Doc. You know, I just, we can get this kind of over with quickly. I gotta get back to the head office because
Sure. I've got. Okay, let me see if I can get to the. I mean, it's all kind of important. We should.
Sure.
Gotta shuffle through these papers here. So I see that your blood pressure is fairly elevated.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you know, it's a great job. I've got like 10 accounts right now. I'm hoping to get up to 11, and you know, it's definitely stressful, but it's like the good stress. It's like the good stress where you know you're doing a lot of really great work, and you know, frickin' David over there in accounting, he only has 9 accounts, so you know, it's worth it, right?
So I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but high blood pressure paired with heart disease is really not a good combination to have.
Do I have the heart disease?
You do. You have both of those things. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not to mention you've also looks like you've got a couple of ulcers.
You know, one thing I do, and this is a little trick I picked up from my boss actually, whose job I might be in line for. Is you know, at the end of the day, I just have a couple of scotches. That helps to calm me down. I just feel this wave of relaxation pass over me, and I think that's probably good. That's probably why my heart is so healthy at this point. As healthy as it is, you know.
It might be, yeah. Do you eat a lot of red meat?
Oh my God! Yeah. Every Tuesday we have filet mignon at the office.
Okay.
Every Wednesday we have T-bone. Every Thursday we have pork tenderloin because it's, you know, a little healthier. And Friday is double steak day, where we have a little competition between the boys and me to see who can eat their steak the fastest.
Okay.
Usually win.
Okay. And how many cups of coffee do you have a day?
Oh, how many cups of coffee? I'm drinking, this is my, literally this coffee that I have in my hand right now. I don't even take count because, you know, when I wake up in the morning, just straight to the cigarettes, straight to the coffee.
Yeah.
You know, I got to get my go juice so I can get, just, you know, keep driving the company forward. Without me, they would collapse. Without my coffee, I would collapse.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, Mr. Joseph, I'm
Yeah,
afraid
Doc.
I have some terrible news for you.
Did my car get towed? Did my BMW get towed?
I don't know. I can't speak to that.
Please no. God, it's the only thing that brings me joy.
But in regards to your health, Mr. Joseph,
Uh-huh.
I can see that your knees are trembling right now. I need you to know that. Gosh, this is never easy. I need you to know that Talk Tull to Me is it's a proud member of the Feckless Moms audio network.
Oh my God.
I'm so sorry. I'm so
Just
sorry.
like my dad.